The number one mistake, and it's made early in business, is people not doing enough research because I'm also an IP attorney and I end
Ooh,
up, yeah, solving a lot of IP problems for my clients and helping them get properly registered and all of that. But I see the mistakes that people make in naming a
really?
business, naming a brand, coming up with brand identity, naming a signature program or product or service, right? And this is something that we all have to do in our businesses, right? It's
Mhm.
not something that you get to skip if you're building a business.
Today, I've got my new friend Heather Pearce Campbell of legalwebsitewarrior.com. She specializes in working with folks like us. She has her own podcast, Guts, Grit, and Great Business Podcast. More importantly, she's on here today to talk about the 7 legal mistakes made by entrepreneurs and a few by yours truly. Good stuff. Listen in, take note. Do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks.
The legal website warrior came about because the question I was asking myself is, how do we solve the problem of small businesses not getting adequate legal support through the traditional legal industry? And so it was a secondary business that I built
Sure.
and created as a way to more creatively, more effectively, more efficiently meet the needs of clients.
I've been doing business coaching for 17 plus years
Mm.
and have told them time and time again, disclaimer, I'm not a CPA and I'm sure not an attorney. That being said, I've seen virtually every kind of legal bump in the road issue, confusion. Mostly it's just that people are even scared to ask the question about whatever the legalese is in terms of a sales contract, a
Yeah.
partnership agreement, and I form an LLC or an S corp, or insert scary thing here. Luckily, so in a lot of these cases where I would try to make a smooth transition to a topic I know that you already know, and we would all pretend like I didn't know that. But look, I just straight up peaked. You have a 7 legal mistakes by entrepreneurs. Please, for the dear love of God, break those down. The topic of the podcast here is do more by doing less. This, if we
Yes.
do these right, that means we have less time to fret, worry, and agonize over this stuff. What are these 7 mistakes that we don't need to make?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one mistake, and it's made early in business, is people not doing enough research because I'm also an IP attorney and I end
Ooh,
up, yeah, solving a lot of IP problems for my clients and helping them get properly registered and all of that. But I see the mistakes that people make in naming a
really?
business, naming a brand, coming up with brand identity, naming a signature program or product or service, right? And this is something that we all have to do in our businesses, right? It's
Mhm.
not something that you get to skip if you're building a business. And so, failing to research at those early phases, not only from the perspective of avoiding infringement of other people's marks, but also creating names, whether it's a business or brand name, whether it's, like I said, a signature offering name,
Sure.
that are protectable. And people are just doing this wrong all the time. And so that's one of the earliest mistakes, but also one of the easiest ones to fix.
What are people doing? They're just coming up with something they think that sounds cute, runs with it. They don't research who else uses it, if there's a book, if there's a podcast. Uh,
Yes, and the most common one is they go and they go, "Oh, the URL is available. This must be available and okay to
right.
use." No, you've gotta research the USPTO database. If you're smart, you're gonna also research your state registrations as far as business names, because there can be local you can have local, not only common law trademarks, but also state registered trademarks. And
Mhm.
so there's a variety of those potential infringement issues right off the bat, and people just generally kind of take a quick peek, and if they're not doing a lot of research, they can really step in big potholes.
If we have an existing business who's been around for quite some time,
Mhm.
I'm guessing is even though they've been flying under the radar, I say under the radar, maybe they've never looked. This is still something they should probably take a peek at, correct?
Absolutely. And from a couple of perspectives, because first of all, businesses are always growing. They're probably adding new products, new services, right? There's this naming issue that kind of rolls along with you in business if you're always evolving, which businesses should be.
Right.
But also from the standpoint of if you don't have registrations, what I also see is people peak at the beginning and they think, I'll get to it. I'll get to the
Ooh,
trademark
yeah.
registration. I'm not ready for it yet, but I'll get to it. And then they forget or they put it off. And then suddenly they
Somebody
show
knows.
back up when somebody else starts using their quote unquote, I'm putting air quotes, right?
Sure.
Their mark. They don't own it yet. They don't have it registered. And so often clients will show up to me because we're racing to get those filings completed because somebody has started actually infringing the mark.
Gotcha. All right, folks. That means the cute name you've come up with something. I don't know. Do more by doing less. Those are the type of things you want to get properly trade researched and then properly trademarked.
That's right. That's
Too much
right.
mental note for me later, Heather. Anywho, what's number two?
Number two, and a lot of businesses, and probably a lot that you work with as well, get this right, meaning that they prioritize getting a legal entity set up. But
Hmm.
plenty still do this too late in the game. 60% of small businesses in the United States are sole proprietors. They
Right.
actually don't have a legal entity set up, whether that's an LLC, whether it's a C corporation. I heard you mention S corp.
Yep.
S corp is actually a tax election status. You either set up an LLC or you set up a C corporation at the state level,
Gotcha. Correct.
right? And then you file an IRS form that converts the tax treatment into an S corp treatment. But people either, I see a couple things. They either put it off and then they're already kind of engaged in doing business and they've already created a certain amount of liability for themselves before they really buckle down and finish that process, or they get started and what they don't realize is like they never put their operating agreement in place, or they didn't like actually file for a business license, or they didn't really complete the process because there's multiple steps to actually properly legally setting up and registering a business. And sometimes people, they just get midway through and they don't realize there's other stuff to be done, and so they don't ever technically finish the proper legal setup. That can be a trick. And if people are trying to navigate the system themselves, I see that a lot.
A lot of questions I get with that where people get stumped is what you just said, the operating agreement. What should be in an operating agreement?
Yeah. Basically, if you're setting up an LLC, and a lot of the small businesses that I work with, an LLC is a great model for them. They're basically self-funded founders. You might have a couple partners that come
Hmm.
together to create a small business, but they're not, for example, building a bazillion dollar startup that they want to turn around and sell to somebody. They're doing meaningful work in the world, and so they just need to create a really thriving, stable, small business. The operating agreement is basically, how are you going to deal with all these things in your business? It's the rules of how you
Right.
manage that company. Just like with a C corporation, you've got bylaws,
Hmm.
right? It's a document that you keep internally in your own files. It doesn't need to get filed publicly anywhere unless, like, the ways that it comes to light is if you get audited, if you've got a regulatory review happening of your business, if you get sued, right? Those documents are going to come to light because they're going to they need to understand whether they have the option to pierce the corporate veil. Have you managed your business like a business?
Sure.
Whether you've got all your documents in place is going to be a big part of that story.
And they should just chat GPT the documents, right?
Oh my gosh. I'm laughing because just the other day I had a client show up with a proposed document from a service provider. And I
Right.
was like, this document is so weird. I said, please tell me, where did this come from? He's like, well, the service provider who I've worked with for a while is like getting his documents in order and he sent this over. And I was like, basically the whole thing needs to be redrafted. And then later he got back to me and he said, yeah, he used chat GPT to put this together. And I go, oh, this makes so much more sense.
Hmm.
And yeah, people, chat GPT, like, it may spit out phrases that sound legal that
Right.
you think it was so poorly put together, like, as a comprehensive document. If you have a legal mind working for your business, there's so many other things that go into creating proper language, and it's including understanding your business processes, how your, for example, how your enrollment process works. And this is not just in regards to like your operating agreement, that's one thing. But in
Sure.
regards to like your primary client services agreement, which is another one of the areas where people make big mistakes, right? Like, don't cobble something together. I tell people, protect your money maker. You better protect the thing that is making you money and have a contract in place that really fits for your business so that you've got full confidence to go full steam ahead
Mhm.
serving your clients because you've got documents that work for you.
All right. Not researching IP. Set up legal entity. What's number three?
Yeah. Number 3 is failing to protect your primary service with an adequate client service agreement. So it's what we just touched on, right? I see people show up all the time that are years into business and they're having a problem with a client and they send over, I'm putting in air quotes, their standard agreement. And I'm like, "Oh, obviously they've cobbled this together and they've just been kind of scraping by, but so much of it ends up needing to be fixed, and so much of it also is me walking through their business processes. How do you enroll people? How
Mhm.
does the service go? What are your timelines? How do you collect payment? All of this stuff has to be properly handled and clarified in an appropriate contract.
And I'm assuming when you're talking about that, and I have a lot of listeners that are coaches, advisors,
Mhm.
agency owners,
Yep.
you're talking to them, right?
I'm talking to them. Yeah, these are all small businesses that have a heavy online presence, but they usually generally offer a primary service or a set of primary services. So even though they're online, I work with a ton of expert-based businesses and service providers. And so that core service or set of services, you need strong documentation around, not only to protect the money that's flowing into your business, but also to protect that client relationship. Have you like if you're listening and you're thinking about the experience that your business is providing to your client, compare and contrast it with your favorite experiences that you've had
Mhm.
hiring a service provider or experiencing some business offering something, and then also contrast it with experiences you've had where that's gone wrong. You can quickly pick apart your own processes and systems and client experience so that
Mhm.
you create something that's much more thoughtful. And when somebody shows up and you enroll them in a seamless manner, you've got documentation that does not interfere with the process, but supports the process,
Ooh.
that has a lot of clarity in the contract. Your potential client is like, you know what? This person really has it together. They're taking care of their business in every way that I can see, and I know that they're going to take care of me. That is just the level of confidence that comes when people see that you've got your systems, your processes in place. And really, what I tell my clients is that legal when it's done right, it is a system that underlays and supports all your other business systems, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's the enrollment process, whether it's the delivery of the services, right? Having proper business
Right.
policies in place, having all of your key disclosures in place. It supports the rest of the experience that people have with your business.
Would that be appropriate after they got the correct documentation in place is to maybe put it online and have somebody where they can read through, check, do an electronic signature before payment?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
yes, you've just mentioned one of the critical potholes that many small businesses step into. It's basically a bait and switch where they have people sign up and pay them money
Right.
before they send over the contract for signature or before they
Yeah.
say, here's the terms of our program. No, you've got to disclose those terms. You've got to disclose that language before you accept the money. Otherwise, it really is a bait and switch where people are unknowingly they don't know what they're signing up for from a
Sure.
legal perspective, and then they've already given you the money, and so after the fact, it's just unilateral disclosure of terms. That doesn't work very well. Not only from a building client relationship standpoint, but also from a legal standpoint. It won't be upheld.
Good deal. So don't slip in the fact afterward that now they owe you monthly laundry duties and a Coke every Saturday.
That's right. That's right.
What's number 4?
Number 4 is failing to protect your online portion of your business in the right way. Very often I see small businesses also skimping on really doing what it takes to understand how to be a robust and well-protected online business,
Mhm.
right? So what this looks like is having somebody like me analyze your online presence and helping you understand from a documentation standpoint, also from a functional standpoint. Like we just talked about this issue of achieving constructive notice, right? This just means giving people disclosure of the key terms before they sign up. There's a ton of online enrollment and online funnels that lead people to paying money where you're not getting exposed to terms ahead of,
Right.
just signing up. And so it's everything from are you having proper disclosures and terms in place related to sharing information? Because there's three primary functions online. Sharing information is one. Mm. And as expert-based businesses, we do a lot of this,
Right.
a lot of publishing information, a lot of sharing information. Number two is collecting information. This is going to be your privacy policy.
Yep.
This is a document that's required by law, pretty much regardless of where you are in the world. And particularly for my clients, that almost the vast majority of them are international in nature,
Mhm.
you've got to have some compliant privacy policies that take into account the locations where you're serving people. And it's a much bigger deal than just going to a free terms generator and slapping
Sure.
some basic paragraphs up on your site and calling it good. So that's function number two, is collecting data. And then function number three is selling data or selling information, selling what's inside of your services, and making sure that you have proper protection in place for those processes, for that IP, right? Protect your sales,
Right.
protect your merchant account. A lot of people end up in trouble with their merchant accounts because, especially through COVID, even businesses that did not have a history of chargeback requests suddenly
Mhm.
were being hit with chargeback requests,
Oh,
people
yeah.
just wanting their money back, right? Making unethical choices because they were just in a pinch.
Good deal. Gosh,
Yeah,
and I have thought of 0 of those. Every one of those, the way you say it makes sense. So
right.
what's number 5?
Number 5 is waiting too long to get your IP registrations. We talked about doing the initial research and actually choosing
Mhm.
the right phrases. But often I hear people like I had a guy show up really a couple years ago for a trademark in his business. And he's like, yeah, I've known for like 3 or 4 years that when I was ready for a trademark, I'd be working with you. And I thought, isn't this interesting? 3 or 4 years it's taken him to get to the point
Right.
of being like, okay, I'm going to protect my business name. That's too long, folks. I mean, yes, I was happy to serve him. We got it successfully registered. The reason he showed up, other people were starting to use it.
Yep.
Other people were starting to use that name, and they recognized it in the marketplace. Don't be that guy, right? Don't be that human where you just don't prioritize your business to the point that it like you take some basic steps to protect it. It really registrations are not out of reach. People tell themselves that, right? And that's really prior to this list of 7
Sure.
biggest mistakes is the just refusing to look in the box because they think it's gonna be Pandora's box. It's not Pandora's box. There's a limited list of really the core things that you need to tackle, but the first mistake is not looking in the box at all.
Who is Pandora? And no, I'm not speaking exclusively to you because I've said it all the time, and I don't know who Pandora is. Is she
Right?
good? Is it a she? I don't
She
know.
must have been a real treat. I mean, we've named a box after her,
Oh
so,
my goodness. I don't know what I'm Googling afterwards. All right. So not waiting too long to get the IP. Don't show up to Heather 4 years later and say, all right. All right. So
right.
what's number 6?
Just do it. Number 6 is failing to have proper contracts and documentation in place when working with independent contractors. I
Ooh.
see this all the time. People bringing outside third parties into their business and not having proper upfront documentation that says the things that need to be handled at the start. So, for example, you're hiring somebody to create new brand assets for you, or maybe draft web copy. Who owns it at the end of that? You sure as heck better have some documentation that says you own that stuff so that You can go obtain registration.
Gotcha.
You can, right? You can do all of the things that it takes to actually protect those brand assets once those are completed. Similarly, if you're making disclosures to those people that from the standpoint of they're getting access to kind of the insides of your business,
Right.
whether it's your client list, your financials, your whatever it is, your internal systems and processes, an appropriate portion of an independent contractor agreement is dedicated to non-disclosure and confidentiality, right? And you can have separate documents in place, but you can also build those into one comprehensive document. And people miss this all the time. And so they're sharing the insides of their business. And they haven't actually put language in place that allows somebody to do that safely and not have the right to go violate their
Sure.
proprietary IP, take information with them, etc.
And you're talking about even all the way down to the branding items you get from a digital marketer. Who owns those? Because that has to be in documentation.
Absolutely. Or think about bringing an independent contractor in to help, let's say, just deliver a specialized or a discrete service, right? Temporarily, you're bringing on some short-term help. And they're doing work for you where they're developing a new concept or they're taking your current outline and they end up adding to it. Maybe you've got a system or a way of doing things. And so now suddenly you have something that's called joint IP. How are
Oh,
how are you dealing with joint IP? If you don't have terms in place, it can be a very tricky wicket to untangle who owns what, who gets to use it after that relationship is concluded, etc.
did you say tricky wicket?
I said tricky wicket, sticky
I
wicket,
I hope you
whatever
don't.
it is.
I hope you don't have IP on that. I'm stealing it.
Right.
So what's the grand finale here? What is lucky number 7?
Yeah, grand finale is going to be internal policies, looking internally to not only document important policies that are relevant for even if it's just you. Let's pretend that you're a solopreneur and you don't have team.
Right.
You want to have documented, even from a liability perspective, consistent ways that you do things, right? And so internal policies around data protection. So everything from how often are you backing up systems? How often are you making website updates? How often are you updating passwords, right? To other policies that support the build out of a team, right? It's those internal policies, and there's a whole range that can be developed, but that is part of developing strong business systems.
Right.
And too often, from a legal perspective, people are ignoring the legal side. They're focusing just on kind of the logistics of doing business. But you need to have somebody look at those things with you and help you understand legal ramifications of getting that stuff wrong.
Look, we've got not researching IP, setting up the legal entity, failing to protect service with agreements, failing to protect online business the right way, waiting too long to get the IP registration, failing to get good contracts with vendors, and then my own internal policies.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of info in a short period of time, and probably some of that is more applicable to certain listeners than others. But I would imagine a lot of people just might not have gotten the first 2 or 3 right out of the gate.
Well, and here's the thing. I've got a free little mini course. It's called my Legal Basics Boot Camp that walks you through because I know we separately had talked about
Yeah,
my 5 bucket framework, right, for legal
right.
success. Really, what you need is a way to continually assess your needs and just take the next step. You don't have to do all of this stuff all at once, but just like you're continuing to build on your marketing efforts, your sales program, your whatever it is, legal needs to be in the conversation. You need to be handling one step at a time and then just looking for what's next. It's not a like you have to sit down and do it all at once, but you need to know
Mhm.
like what are we tackling this quarter? Maybe we clean up our client services agreement as a
Right.
starter. What are we doing next quarter? Should we meet with somebody and talk about what is our most important IP? Let's just get an IP
True.
assessment done, right? Maybe the next quarter we meet with our accountant or with the lawyer and make sure our legal entity is set up the right way, make sure that we've got a list of our important annual dates in our business so that we're
Mm-hmm.
not missing deadlines. I had a client recently that showed up. He's on the eve of litigation. He's being dragged into
Oh,
arbitration right now. Realized his entity in his state had
oh
been
no.
administratively dissolved because he missed a deadline. He missed a filing.
He didn't turn it. Yeah. He didn't fill out the paperwork and get it back in.
Yeah. And it often it's just a renewal. It's like a $50 renewal in
Yeah.
some states just to make your annual filing and say, "Hey, state of Washington, state of Oregon, wherever you're based, I'm still in business. Here I am." And that can cause you so many problems. So it's really just taking one step at a time to make sure, again, back to the business systems, you've got a way to make progress on these things. After a year or two of just step by step, you're going to start to feel like your business foundation is so much more solid. And that's really what I want for people, is for them
Mhm.
to feel like gung ho, full steam ahead in their business because they've taken these things off the list that cause them worry and keep them up at night.
That's a good transition in talking about getting all of these things done, but not trying to do every single one of them at the same time because that's overwhelming.
It's
Uh,
overwhelming.
and I always, and I've wanted to get to the 5 bucket framework. We're not going to. But I know, first off, Heather has a million and one awesome resources available on her site for free. Please do take advantage of those. But before I get to that, I always like to ask people a simple question. By simple, I mean really hard. What is something right now, Heather, that in terms of doing more by doing less, what is something you should be doing less of?
Oh, you guys, I'm just going to say it. Less Chat GPT for
Yay.
your basic legal stuff, less looking for and scraping things from the internet. You have no idea if it's a fit. And I've seen so many people get themselves in trouble by taking documentation that they think they could make work for their business, and it's absolutely not a fit for what they're doing.
What should you what should you be doing less of? Not you, the
Myself,
proverbial, you, Heather Pierce Campbell.
what I should be doing less of. I'll be honest, I'm in a really good phase right now. I hired myself a business coach last
There you
year.
go.
Yeah, and I've had business coaching off and on over the years. And we're in a time where things are really flowing for me. I'm already
Good.
doing less of a lot of things, but primarily it's less of a lot of activities that kind of are on that like should do list, but
Right.
really it's about boiling down and saying, what is the very top thing that I know is going to move the needle? Who are the absolute top 5 people that I need to connect with this week instead of 20? That kind of thing. It's really dialing in on what will move the needle the most and the fastest, and letting a lot of other things drop away.
Well, then that answers the question when I generally ask, what should you be doing less of? And we get a variety of answers, but you kind of tackled it. You already hired a coach and you're narrowing down the things that you should not probably be doing. And it sounds like entirely too many opportunities, which
Yes,
means you need to narrow down. Here's the top one, two, three
that's
that
it.
I need to take advantage of.
Well, and that's the irony, is I think so often, and I've been stuck in this trap as well, we think we need to do more. We think that there's
Uh-huh.
more to do for a bigger or better or a different outcome. And really, it's doing less, but doing it better, doing it with exactly the right people or in exactly the right way. And so, and if you're having trouble answering that question for yourself, what should you be doing less of? Because it's a really powerful question. You got to hire somebody to help you get eyeballs on everything that you're doing and help you navigate your way to doing less.
I agree. I tried to be my own business client. Turns out I was my worst customer. I was terrible. It would not listen to me. So
We
I
all are. It's how it works. We all need somebody else to peek inside our brain and peek inside our days and help us clean things up.
Heather, how can somebody find you?
Super easy. They can go to my website, legalwebsitewarrior.com, just how it sounds. Like you said, tons of free resources there. I've also, if you're going to find me on social media, go to LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. A lot of my people are in LinkedIn. I've met some awesome new folks there as well. And then come pop over if you're a podcast listener, which I assume you are. You're sitting here listening to
Yeah.
Charles' awesome podcast. come join me on Guts, Grit, and Great Business. It's a other conversations around business and business building. Not a lot of law stuff. You can go to my website for the law stuff, but it's a lot of conversation around building awesome businesses.
Good deal. Heather, it's a lot of information in a short period of time. Getting me, unfortunately, 2-3 things I need to go think about. But hey, thanks for coming and joining us today.
Oh my gosh, good to be here. I'm so happy to be in the conversation of how you do more by doing less. I really think it is the conversation to be having. So thank you for hosting this, Charles, and all you're doing to bring these conversations to people. We need them.
Good deal. Have a good day.
You too.
Don't take off just yet. I've created a new program just for you, helping overworked entrepreneurs create their very own 4-day work week in 90 days or less. Look, if you'd rather spend more time with family, friends, traveling, exercising, having the time to do what you want instead of, I don't know, putting out never-ending fires, tackling another to-do list, and checking email at 9 p.m., then go to my website, yourcharlesalexander.com. If you've created the income you want but don't have the time freedom you deserve, then this is for you. And as always, if you don't, an angel may actually lose its wings. True story. Have a great day.